Hello everyone, Namaskar. In this lecture, we will discuss about quality characteristics, quality aspects of plant based fermented foods and beverages. Okay. That we will see in briefly that what are the fermented fruit and vegetable beverages, although this we have covered in detail in earlier lectures, but here just see the brief summary. Then quality characteristics of these beverages like physical and rheological qualities, nutritional qualities or sensory properties, even microbiological properties, and also we will discuss some of the spoilage microorganisms, which is that the microorganism which spoil the carbonated or the fermented fruit beverages, and then also how to evaluate these properties and quality characteristics. So, here we will be discussing these quality characteristics, there we will discuss some major things about their evaluation also. So, you know that fermented fruits and vegetable products or beverages, they are usually prepared to improve the palatability and shelf life. In the earlier classes, we have discussed in detail about all these aspects. Okay, the major forms of juices, either raw, centrifuged or and filtered, are used for fermentation. However, in the preparation of fermented fruit and vegetable beverages, one thing is very important, which we discussed earlier also, that there may be chances of the contamination. These fruits or vegetables, they might have by their nature, they might be contaminated with various microorganisms, etc. So, they need to be properly taken care of. So, these fruit juices, before they are subjected to fermentation, the juices or beverages should be properly desanitized, or they should be properly pasteurized, etc. Okay, various types of fermentation depending upon the need is done by making common conditions favorable for enzyme activities, because in the fermentation process desirable bacteria and the enzyme contained in those bacteria, they do their job, okay, and they change the various components, etc., which we will see little later, and the fermented beverages produce, and they can be stored at low temperature for a longer shelf life. So, here in this table in 1-2 slides, I have tried to give you that what are the different beverages which are fermented beverages prepared in different countries, and what is the microorganism used in for their fermentation, or which has been isolated from these fermented beverages. For example, that Rheological is a beverage which originated in Turkey, and it is a substitute for this beverage is red grapes, and the microorganisms, various microorganisms which has been isolated from this lactobacillus group, like lactobacillus paracasei, L. crasai, brevis, and so on. Similarly, kombucha is its origin is in China, and the substrate is the tea, and the various microorganisms which are there in this Acetobacter, lactobacillus, Saccharomyces, Deca species, Saccharomyces species, and so on. So, in Finland origin there is a Gephilus, it is various fruit juices are used, and here Lactobacillus rhamnosus, Propionibacterium, etc., are the microorganisms. In Sweden, there is a beverage Provia, and which is prepared from orange, strawberry or black currant juices, and here Lactobacillus plantarum is the microorganism. In USA, Goodbelly, there is mango, blueberry, pomegranate, blackberry, etc., even tropical orange and coconut water juices, etc., are used for its preparation, and here the mainly microorganism is Lactobacillus plantarum. In Norway or in Finland, Biola is the beverage which is orange, prepared from orange, mango, apple or pear flavor, etc., or even several vegetable juices. Here Lactobacillus rhamnosus is the, okay. In the USA again, Kevica is the beverage which is prepared from a sparkling lemon or ginger probiotic drink. Here Lactobacillus lemnosus, Bacillus coagulans, L. plantarum, Paracasei, these are the microorganisms. In Sweden, is the Rela, it is prepared from fruit juices, Lactobacillus reuteri. Then in Australia, Healthy Life probiotic, these are made from apple and mango juices, Lactobacillus paracasei or Lactobacillus plantarum, etc. used. In Thailand, there is a Mali probiotic juice, which is prepared from the white grape and orange juice, here Lactobacillus paracasei. So you can see from these three tables in 3 slides, we can summarize that as Lactobacillus is the majority of micro, and in that Lactobacillus species, particularly the Lactobacillus plantarum is the most commonly used microorganism for the fermentation of fruit and beverage juices, and this Lactobacillus also is a probiotic bacteria. So this so in the different substrate can be different, okay, depending upon the type of beverage that is required, and but the same microorganism can act there. So as far as the quality characteristics are concerned, you will see that physical, chemical, microbiological, etc. In the physical characteristic or physical property, that is, it is very important phenomena for a fermented beverage. It is of great importance, and they are positive perception by the consumer, because many a times the consumer judge the beverage on the basis of physical properties such as color, texture, etc. and but mouthfeel, aroma, that is, this also plays important role. So color and appearance are the most important physical attributes for quick judgment. However, taste, texture, aroma can also contribute equally to the acceptance of a final product. So important physical properties of any fermented beverage, or for that matter for any beverage, etc. is the texture, TSS, color, pH, titratable acidity, and aroma. These are. So the texture of beverage are measured by hardness, adhesiveness, cohesiveness, springiness, or gumminess. You can see here this texture profile curve, that is hardness is the peak force of the compression cycle, which is defined as necessary force to achieve a required level of deformation. It is the final power required to reach a stable deformation. Adhesiveness, okay, it is the force required to detach a sample from the probe. It is calculated as the field square of a negative peak. Cohesiveness is it is calculated as quotient for field surfaces indicated by the curves of the second time and the first press. Springiness is a ratio of the time measured from the start of the second and the first cycle of pressing to reach maximum deformation during each cycle. Okay. So here you see that springiness. Okay. Gumminess is determined as a multiple of hardness and cohesiveness. You multiply hardness and cohesiveness, product will be gumminess. Okay. The other properties are total soluble solids. They are measured by refractometer, either head refractometer or average refractometer, and in the lecture 30 or other lecture earlier, we have discussed in detail about these measurements. To measure the total soluble solids or sugar content, that it includes the carbohydrate, organic acid, protein, fat, and minerals of the fruit. It represents about 10 to 20% of the fruit fresh weight, with increased as fruit mature, making the product less acidic, sweet fruit, etc. So all these details of total soluble solids, their measurement details, you could please refer to lecture 30 earlier. Okay. Similarly, the color measurement also, the color of fruit juice and concentrate was determined using a colorimeter. This is very important property as it defines the first appearance of the fermented fruit and vegetable beverages. So it is mostly spectrophotometric methods are used, or Hunter lab colorimeter, LAB values. This was also discussed in detail in the earlier lecture 30. You may refer to that lecture. That was for beverages. The same will be true here as well. pH is a quantitative measure of the acidity or basicity. Fruit juices have different pH levels which can be measured by pH meter. The balance of pH level is important. to have optimum taste and shelf life of the fermented products. Titratable acidity is a measure of the amount of acid or acids present in a food sample. It is an important parameter defining the quality of the fermented fruit juices. If titratable acidity of juice is higher, then it becomes difficult for saliva to neutralize it, and therefore it becomes potentially damaging, particularly to the teeth. So, this titratable acidity gives important information like this. Okay. The optimum TTA must be maintained to have a better quality of the fermented fruit and beverages, and it is a proper effect on our health system and particularly teeth, etc. Then these electronic tongue and electronic nose, they can be used to determine the taste and smell, etc. So, you can see here that is even the fermented beverages like wine. In the wine, the wine testing requires a very high skill. Okay. So, the same the gentleman here, they are testing in red wine. So, what there are our sensory organs like our nose and mouth. In the mouth there is a tongue. So, the tongue, there are in the tongue taste buds, etc. They take these burst and you get that information like this in our actual system. Then tongue acquires the information, and then this information is immediately sent to our brain center nervous system, where our brain analyzes the information sent by the tongue or receptors, and then gives its impression, and that is recorded as a taste of that product. Similarly, in the nose, in the human system, nose takes that is this olfactory system. It takes the senses the flavor or smells, and then this smell again the information is sent by the nerves to the brain, and in the brain there are neurons, etc. They analyze the data and give the impression. So, these are the in fact in actual system in the human olfactory system, where our tongue and nose they do the job. So, in the electronic noses and tongues, there are instruments now available where there are sensors, maybe that metal oxide sensors or such other sensors are made, and these sensors they do the same job like what our nose or our tongue do. So, in the equipment there are computer controlled, there are softwares. So, basically in the electronic nose what it does, that is there are this it matters volatilized, and these volatiles, that is flavor volatiles, they are taken, that is they sensed by the metal oxide as other sensors, and this data is sent to the instrument. There are neural network analyzed, and then either by PCA or such other multi-component analysis, etc. There is a discriminatory test, that is obviously one has to give that first a fresh sample, good quality sample, and this it will compare with the fresh quality, and it will discriminate the samples. Similarly, the tongue also, electronic tongue, that is it has a sensors array, and sensor array it senses takes the bioactive compounds, etc. taste buds, like what your taste bud does, the same job is done by these sensors. Okay. And then it is sent to the chemometric tools of the equipment, and finally it is analyzed and you get the data. So, this many times there is these electronic nose and electronic tongues, they give very useful information and in a quick time. Okay. Then rheological properties. The rheological measurement of the fermented beverages is important for knowing about its consistency. In general, the control viscometer having coaxial geometry or cone and plate geometry is used for carrying out safety and shear experiment. In this experiment, the shear rate is varied from 0 to 100 hertz, and the temperature is remained fixed. You can see the graph here, that is apparent viscosity versus the shear rate. Okay. So, the viscosity versus shear rate graph, this reveal the flow property of the juices, how this and which is either a pseudoplastic or dilatant. The consistency coefficient of the juice sample is measured by evaluation of power law model. The power law model says that eta is equal to K to the power n. Eta is the viscosity of the juice, K is the consistency coefficient, Y is the shear rate, and N is the flow behavior index. So, the consistency coefficient and flow behavior index are used for explaining the rheological properties of fermented beverages. Temperature and total soluble solids of beverage affect consistency coefficient and viscosity. The consistency coefficient and viscosity of the beverage, they follow Arrhenius concept, like K consistency coefficient is equal to AK exponential EK by RT. That is general equation, K is equal to A e to the power E by RT. So, same thing here, Arnita, that is N, the viscosity equal to AN exponential En by RT. So, AK and AN are the pre-exponential constant, EK and AN are the activation energies, okay, R is the universal gas constants, and T is the absolute temperature. Then we will discuss about nutritional property. In the earlier lectures also we had some discussion on this aspect, that these are during the fermentation process, okay, that various new metabolites in microorganisms, when the secondary metabolites are produced and some very bioactive component like vitamins, minerals, etc. are synthesized during the fermentation process. So, obviously, these fermented beverages, they are considered more nutritive than their unfermented counterparts. Okay. That is, these microorganisms which are present during the fermentation process, they are both catabolic as well as anabolic, that is, they break down the complex compounds as well as they synthesize complex vitamins and other growth factors. So, they do both the jobs, that is, the ultimate effect is various new health compounds, vitamins, micronutrient, minerals, peptides, etc. are synthesized, manufactured, produced. So, lactic acid bacteria and yeast fermentation were observed to enhance nutritional content in the food ingredients. So, enzymatic hydrolysis in the fermented food cause reduction in the level of antinutrients like tannins and phytic acid, etc., that they are degraded with the help of phytases, and there is a enhanced bioavailability of simple sugar or polysaccharides like the amylases, these enzymes, they act on these simple sugars or even polysaccharides, they improve their bioavailability. Proteases improve the bioavailability of proteins, or free fatty acids, their bioavailability is improved by the action upon the other enzyme lipases. Even the bioavailability of the iron is improved in the fermented beverages. Okay. The rhizopus oligosporus are similar foods molds in tempeh, and which is an Indonesian origin rich dish. It cause increase in niacin about 7 times, okay, and it is synthesized vitamin B12 through fermenting bacterium growth with the essential mold. So, here this fermented food is having good amount of B12, which is normally not present in the plant sources foods. So, this similarly Cassabilla pneumonia, that is this bacterium, that is a non-pathogenic strain, is responsible for producing vitamin B12 when inoculated into Indian idli fermentation. So, with the inoculation of this particular bacteria with idli, we can produce idli, a plant food containing a significant amount of B12. So, similar, that is, reactions can also be possible, that is improvement, similar nutritional improvement will be possible in the fermented beverages, etc. as well. So, the fermented beverage in nutshell overall, they have a good vitamins, antioxidant activity, peptide production, enzyme production, there may be increase in the saponin and isoflavin values, production of polyglutamic acid or degradation of anti-nutrients, etc. In the ultimately the fermented beverage becomes good source of nutrients. Then sensory properties, another very important properties, because the most of these beverages, particularly fermented beverages, they are judged by their sensory characteristics. Okay. So, the parameters normally analyzed through sensory studies include taste, flavors, smell, color, appearance, aftertaste, texture, etc. And now our 5 sense organs are used to measure this. So, right. So, various Statistical methods are used for analyzing the sensory data and draw conclusion from it. Okay. The acceptability of the fermented fruit and beverage is largely dependent upon its sensory properties. So, trained panel of judges or even consumers, they are given this beverage and they are asked to record their appreciation about the beverage into some data sheet provided, and then these data are analyzed for various and decisions are made. So, it is important to have a brief knowledge about the sensory method used for testing of fermented fruits and beverages. So, the different methods are discriminative test, 9-point hedonic scale testing, ranking method and fuzzy method. In the discriminating test, there is here in this test, it is a difference test is one of the most useful sensory test, and this test is designed to discriminate difference between two or more samples. And this discriminative test may be paired comparison test, duo trio test, triangle test and multiple sample test. Pair comparison test is used to make comparison between only two samples based on sensory attributes like texture, taste, acidity, color, etc. This test is relatively easy to organize and implement. It is typically used in comparing new and old processing techniques, change of ingredient in the product, preference testing at the consumer level, etc. Suppose there is already a standard reference beverage in the market and a new beverage has been produced. So, this paired comparison test can be used to compare this new with the old one or reference one. Okay. Then duo trio test, it is a modified pair comparison test, that is one sample is identified as a reference or first given to the panelist or the evaluation. So, in this case there is the known sample and the panelist is told about this. Yes, you take this sample and then take it and record your appreciation or just learn the appreciation of this, and then the subsequently the two coded samples are given to them. So, the first the panelist makes its finalizes its appreciation about the reference sample, and then the two unknown samples are given, and in that one sample is the identical to the reference sample. So, the panelists are asked to indicate which out of these two samples is same as the reference sample. This test is suitable for products that have relatively intense color, taste and are kinesthetic effect such that sensitivity of evaluator is significantly reduced. So, this is the even for duo trio test, the record sheet is given, data record sheet. Then the triangle test. Triangle test is the most well known and more frequently used out of the three difference tests. As its name implies, that is triangle, it is a three product test in which all the samples are coded and the panelist's task is to determine which two are most similar or which one is most different from the other two. So, the test is more difficult test because the panelist must recall the sensory characteristics of two products before evaluating the third and then make a decision. Like for example, there are three samples here 212, 347, 212 and 652. So, means there is a 347. So, they are asked to encircle, that is encircle the sample which is different from the other two sample, just this data, and then this data they analyzed statistically. Then multiple sample test, here the test involves more than 3 samples are classified as multiple sample test. They may have equal or unequal numbers of each sample. When they are applied as two difference tests, the judge is required to separate the sample into two groups of like samples. When they are applied as directional test, the judge is asked to identify the group of higher or lower intensity of a given criteria. So, this is the data record sheet of the multiple sample test. Then 9-point hedonic test, that is here, that is the judges are asked to record their appreciation about their that is judgment of the various quality attribute in terms of numerical numbers, that is where the 9-point means that is 1 to 9 is taken the number, where 5 is neither like or not dislike, and 9 is the like extremely, and 1 is dislike extremely, and the other range like this here it is given. Okay. So, the in this hedonic method, psychological states of like and dislike are measured on a rating scale. Normally, rating such a scale has been categorized into 5 for numerical, geographic, extended, etc. And the 9-point numerical scale is given in figure, has been most extensively used in the new product development and the consumer studies. Ranking method is ranking method 2 or more samples are provided to the panelists, who are asked to arrange them in ascending or descending order of intensity of a specific attribute. Ranking is often used for screening inferior from superior samples in product development, and this method is also suited for comparison of market samples of different brands. Samples may be ranked in order of the degree of acceptability or by specific attributes. Then fuzzy methods, here the rating of both the sample and its attribute in terms of importance is done. For each sample, the scale of measurement is from the not satisfactory to excellent, and for sensory attribute, the scale is varied from not at all important to extremely important. The sensory data is converted into triplets using the predefined fuzzy methods. These triplets are then converted into membership function values using standard fuzzy scale, and finally, these similarity values are evaluated for ranking the sample. The fuzzy method has the advantage of taking the importance of sensory attributes for ranking the sample. The method is also used to rank the sensory attributes based on their similarity values, which are calculated using the importance scores, that is which score is given more importance, which score is given less importance. And let us see microbiological properties, that is the microbiological properties of fermented beverages are very important. I told you earlier also that is yes, these fermented fruits, etc., they must be properly sanitized and pasteurized, and at the same time that good manufacturing practices should be used, so that you get beverage, fermented beverage that free from any contaminating microorganism, and every possible effort should be made that the only desirable reactions, desirable microorganisms are there and the undesirable, etc. But when thermal processing is used, it should be used in such a way that only, as I told you, spoilage microorganism get killed, not the beneficial. The beneficial microorganism, beneficial enzymes, etc., must be preserved. Okay. Then for all the fermented food, lactic acid bacteria is the dominant microbiota. Okay. It is present in lactic acid bacteria. It is may be homofermentative or heterofermentative. Homofermentative LAB produces lactic acid as in the product. Heterofermentative, it produces ethanol as in product, or even Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This also gives ethanol. So fermenting microorganism mainly involve, there is various, that is LAB like Enterococcus, Streptococcus, Leuconostoc, etc. Okay. Then again the spoilage caused by microorganisms in wine, this aspect also we had earlier discussed, like several microbiota contaminants apparent, they appear to survive on the walls and other interior surface of the wineries, including those of presses and fermentation tanks within wooden barrel, etc. So various yeasts like Decara, Saccharomyces causes, etc., spoilage the bulk. Where Saccharomyces cerevisiae appears to be the more problematic than identical, as some strains isolated from the dry white wines come to be seem to be more of a potential spoilage yeast. Okay. Both Z. baillii and S. cerevisiae can grow at low pH in the presence of acid concentration near the legal limits. Okay. So, here you can see that the microorganism, their sensory visual problems such as sediment in figure A1 and A2, that is the sediment, or in figure B it is the film formation, or the turbidity, that is in the wine it may become turbid. So, microorganism present in wine, they may cause a spoilage which could be seen from the change in physical properties, like there may be sedimentation, film formation, turbidity and viscosity change and so on. Here one case study that is where that about 469 commercially available fermented alcoholic beverages including beer, draft microwave, pasteurized fruit wines and their grapes and others, even fortified rice wine, Izuku, both raw and pasteurized were evaluated, and there the aerobic plate count and lactic acid bacteria count, acetic acid bacteria and fungi count, these were evaluated, and in general it was found that acetic acid bacteria was not detected in the pasteurized grape wine, refined rice wine, Izuku, and even in the other non-pasteurized wine. Okay. See, the fungi growth was observed in beer and non-pasteurized Izuku. So, there are certain reports that yes, these fermented wines etc., they may contain. So, good manufacturing practices and good sanitary practices become very important. Finally, I will summarize this lecture by saying that the yes, fruits and vegetable beverages, particularly fermented beverages, since they are taken for that their health value and then their production, microorganisms are generally used in their production process. So, it becomes a very delicate process, and the microorganism, that is all the conditions suitable should be used in such a way that only desirable microorganism grow. Secondary unwanted microorganisms like pathogenic microorganism, spoilage microorganism, they should be discouraged and conditions should be created in such a way. Otherwise, the whole purpose may get defeated. So, the fermented beverages, their characteristics, their properties are very important, both sensory, physical, chemical, microbiological, and there are various standard methods. Okay. Ultimately, that sensory method or fuzzy logic analysis etc., instrumental method should be used, and efforts should be made that these fermented beverages are maintained in a good quality. Okay. They are both health values and the sensory appeals, and if there is some problem, definitely in many cases that microorganism, if they grow, they even bring about visible changes, like you can see that development of haze, colonnage etc., change in the color, sedimentation etc., in the beverage. So, if there is any such case, so it means that the beverage is spoiled and one should take care of this. So, this is all about today's lecture. These are the references. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.